Previously, I discussed Eastern philosophy versus Western philosophy and how one employed rationality to tame nature while the other employed spirituality to tame the individual. Today, I'll look at two core philosophical schools, humanism versus animalism. Humanism is a belief that humans are somewhat special, either created by God or not. Therefore, the purpose of any society is to protect all humans equally. Humanism is also called egalitarianism, with a few babies of its own like socialism, feminism, liberalism, and postmodernism. Elitism or animalism, on the other hand, is a belief that some humans are more equal than others, especially the rulers, kings, elite class of people, or the talented people, as in meritocracy. This is because hierarchy is very much part of the animal kingdom. The strongest wins the race. But as human civilization has progressed and we have become more efficient in taming nature, the historical trend is moving towards a more egalitarian human society. So here's the most important question. Was Karl Marx right that the future is communism? But first, let me explain the history of these two divergent philosophical approaches and introduce some of the most important philosophers on each side. Humanism has its roots in religions. In the West, Christianity and Judaism at its core believed that all human beings were equal in the eye of God. Augustine of Hippo believed all humans have free will to choose between good and evil. He also said that one should love everyone equally. Quote, "The measure of love is to love without measure." Thomas Aquinas, another Christian philosopher, argued that God created the world and all humans were equal, especially in freedom. Quote, "By nature all men are equal in liberty, but not in other endowments." Outside the religious tradition, the first true humanist might be Mozi, who lived in the 4th century BC in China. He advocated a kind of universal humanism. At the time, Confucianism was the dominant philosophy in China, in which society was divided based on ranks and hierarchies. So Mozi believed in universal reciprocation. Quote, "Universal love is really the way of the sage kings. It is what gives peace to the rulers and sustenance to the people." This is an early form of humanism. Another early figure was the 6th century Persian philosopher Mazdak, who promoted economic equality among all people. He even protested against the rich having many wives, while the poor having no wife. His idea became quite influential in the Persian Empire, but soon fizzled out. On the opposite of humanism, we have the school of elitist philosophy, which we can term as realism, as it's called in politics. The basic idea of realism is that humans are chaotic and erratic animals that need to be tamed and controlled and ruled, not through honesty or fairness, but through deception or brute force. One of the earliest realist philosophers was Sun Tzu, who lived in China between 544 and 496 BCE. In his famous book, The Art of War, he employs nature's tactics such as camouflage, deception, and even submission to survive or dominate others, especially in wars. His philosophy was to win at all costs, so to speak. For him, life is not about fairness or equality, it was about winning, which is at the heart of evolutionary biology. You only survive or thrive if you win nature's battle and overcome hurdles. Some of his strategies in the art of war are socially counterintuitive like this. Like he says, you must appear small when you're big and appear big when you're small in order to deceive your enemy. In Sun Tzu's art of war, honesty is the worst policy. Quote, "When the enemy is relaxed, make them toil. When full, starve them. When settled, make them move." In other words, stand tall when you're small and sit small when you're tall. These are some basic survival tactics in the wild. For example, in the battle between the carnivores and herbivores. A gazelle jumps higher to show its health, so the cheetahs don't bother chasing them. Some of the tactics are also to throw off your enemy, like when negotiating, ask for less when you want more, which is still in use in corporate capitalism. The art of war's basic rules are to know yourself, your enemy, and your environment, time your attack, and truce, while at the same time make sure your enemy knows nothing truthful about you. Be a peacock when small and be a mouse when big. So this is the earliest form of political deception in order to prolong your rule over others. The winners are those who lie the best. So Sun Tzu borrowed his philosophy from the animal kingdom, where there is no morality, only winners. Machiavelli, who lived between 1469 and 1527, was an Italian thinker who is famous for his book, The Prince, in which he advises the rulers to use any methods available to them to achieve their goal of maximizing their power and domination over other humans. In other words, the famous line that the end justifies the means, which goes contrary to the humanist and religious morality of protecting life. Quote, "It's better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." He argued that a ruler must be like a savage lion when needed and a cunning fox when needed. So brute force combined with cunning deceptions are needed in order to rule over society. Why? Because humans are savages and they're waiting for your weakest moment to strike and take away your power, like Hamlet's uncle in Shakespeare's play Hamlet. Machiavelli lived a few centuries before Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection, but he still understood the savage nature of human politics. In other words, morality is for the weak and power and deception are for the strong. Quote, "He who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command. In order to prevent a rebellion, a ruler must show terror and fear for its subject to behave well. Those at the top of society have the most to lose, so they can use any means available to them to make sure they keep their power and wealth. They use the police, the legal system, and whatever else, so nobody can take those things away from them." So just like Sun Tzu, Machiavelli based his philosophy on the animal kingdom. It's not about equality or fairness, it's about winning and conquering. Thomas Hobbes was an English philosopher who lived between 1588 and 1679. In his book Leviathan, he argued that humans are savages and only a civilized state can protect humans from each other. In other words, humans have established states to escape the brutality of nature. According to him, humans are physical machines in nature, but when entering society, they give up their savage tendencies and power to live peacefully. Quote, "Life in the state of nature is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. The fear of violence is always there. To escape it, humans have made a contract with their governing rulers. In return for their obedience and freedom, the state provides them with peace, justice, protection for them and their property." Just like Machiavelli, Hobbes believed in the use of force to tame people. Quote, "Not believing in force is the same as not believing in gravitation." Despite his argument for a civilized state, he understood that humans were in essence savage animals. So Sun Tzu drew on the animal kingdom, saying deception was better than honesty. Machiavelli went even further, saying that deception combined with brute force are justified to tame humans. Hobbes argued a civilized state has every right to tame the unruly humans. Now let's look at a few philosophers who oppose this animalistic philosophy based on the natural world. These philosophers saw human life as somewhat sacred. Voltaire, who lived between 1694 and 1777, was a French philosopher who believed in a kind of universal individual liberty, not tyranny as Machiavelli suggested. Unlike Machiavelli's iron rule, he believed in open skepticism and freedom of expression for all, so anyone could criticize and even rebel against the dominant traditions and dogmas. Quote, "Men are equal, it's not birth, but virtue that makes the difference." In other words, he didn't support the idea that the rulers and kings had a birthright authority over truth or liberty. The church or the state should not hold absolute power. Instead, everyone, despite their socioeconomic status, deserves the right to have an education and access to knowledge. Today, liberal democracies in the West follow the principles of free speech and individual autonomy, ideas that were promoted by Voltaire, so he's often considered the father of liberal individualism, because he believed everyone, irrespective of their socioeconomic class, deserved to be equally free. So nature works with hierarchy, but Voltaire argued that every human deserved equal freedom to express themselves. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who lived between 1712 and 1778, was born in Geneva. Unlike Thomas Hobbes, who said man is born savage but tamed in society, Rousseau believed that humans are naturally good, but they are contaminated or tainted in society to act terrible. He famously said, "Man is born free, yet he is everywhere in chains." This was especially true in big cities where people turned selfish. He believed in the country people were naturally nicer, friendlier, and fairer, but once people migrated to the cities instead of becoming more civilized, ironically they turned into selfish animals. Unlike Hobbes' top-down approach, Rousseau believed in a bottom-up approach, arguing that the masses should be able to run the state, not some select individuals like kings and generals. His famous book, The Social Contract, is said to have influenced the French Revolution in 1789, in which the anti-monarchy revolutionaries toppled the king and France became a republic. Of course, it didn't last very long, but it sowed the seed of freedom, equality, and brotherhood, which resulted in three major ideologies of socialism, liberalism, and nationalism, which have dominated politics for centuries ever since. So Rousseau's egalitarian approach had a huge influence in political history. So to sum up, the humanists argue that since life is too short, let's all be more equal, fairer, and nicer to each other. Mosey argued for an equal universal education, Rousseau for equal political participation, and Voltaire for equal freedom for everyone to express himself. Political animalists or elitists, on the other hand, argue that since life is too short, it's all about winning, conquering, and dominating others. So they don't trust all humans, therefore promoted a more robust political regime that didn't allow people to be free to challenge the ruler or the state. Sun Tzu used deception, Machiavelli justified repression, and Hobbes promoted state as a tool to control human savages. Now, as a historical trend, we are moving towards an egalitarian humanist future, at least in principle. Also, this was Karl Marx's prediction that slowly we are heading towards a communist utopia. In reality, however, all human societies are highly unequal and hierarchical, and it's unlikely that this will change for a foreseeable future. Humanism invented by humans, while elitism or animalism invented by nature and evolutionary biology. We're all born unequal in beauty, talent, intellect, and physical strength, which contribute to societies being dominated by those who are naturally blessed, either with talent or beauty. But despite nature not being helpful in producing us equally, there is a deep desire among humans for equality, fairness, and justice. You could say that humankind is called kind for a reason. As human civilization has improved and the more we have tamed nature, we have become more confident that a humanist utopia is possible. So in recent centuries, egalitarian philosophy has become more dominant, which a few centuries back must have been unthinkable. Socialist experiments showed the failure of egalitarianism in Russia, but the idea is still pretty strong in the world. Who knows, in the future, humans might produce human babies in labs who are identical in all attributes to create a truly egalitarian utopia. Once you produce baby outside the natural process, equality is a lot easier to achieve. Identical babies produce identical adults. A brave new world kind of world. But will we be happy? Next, I'll discuss the battle between pursuing knowledge and pursuing happiness. In other words, those who pursue knowledge to gain power and those who pursue happiness and peace to live a simpler life.